when emotions aren't super high, when there isn't a crisis on the table, when your loved one isn't coming to you in the heat of the moment, having that conversation with them and expressing your feelings about it, really coming from a place of these limits are about me. They're not about you. They're actually about me. I feel that when you call me after drinking and you've been driving, I feel terrified. I feel guilt. I feel shame. And I feel like I'm not able to support you the way I would like to because I'm so caught up in my emotions then. But really coming from a place of these are my limits. This isn't about you. This is about me. State the limit. Say, if you're drunk, I can't talk to you on the phone because it's so painful for me. That's not within my limits. And anticipate that there is going to be an increase in emotions.
This is Hope to Recharge. I'm Matana. I'm here to guide you and support you through your challenging times, navigating through depression, anxiety, and other mental health struggles. Welcome back, Meg. Thank you for the first 3 incredible episodes. Number 1 episode was understanding borderline, understanding the traits, how to get diagnosed. Number 2 was the road to recovery. Once we get diagnosed, what does recovery look like? Why is DBT so important? How Marsha Linehan created this incredible gift to the universe, and what we think that should not only be for people that are diagnosed with borderline, but for humans in general, the DBT skills. Episode number 3 was breaking down the different skills, like the 100 skills, but we broke it down to the main skills. And in all the episodes, my curiosity came in a lot. And when I was sharing with the community that we're going to do a whole segment, 4-piece segment for Borderline Awareness Month in May, they said, okay, what about the families? Okay, practical. How do we take this incredible tool of DBT and awareness of borderline and incorporate it in family relationships? So that's what we're going to be speaking about today.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Matana. It's been wonderful to have these conversations. And I think this is a really important piece of the picture is the families and loved ones and people supporting someone who's in treatment for BPD.
Yeah. So we're going to do this in a rapid fire questions, just not rapid fire. We'll just do question after. I got these questions from the audience and from friends and groups. And we tried to just make a list of the most effective questions that we thought that either redundant questions that came up or questions that we thought that were very accurate, needed for our community. So family support. What are the most active ways family members could support someone with BPD without enabling negative behaviors?
Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of the questions and a lot of this is to use the DBT skills on yourself, right? I know we've been talking about folks with BPD applying these skills. The family member, the loved one, you need to regulate your own emotions. That's one of the most effective things that you can do in a situation to not increase or escalate a situation is to step back and regulate your own emotion. I think a lot of times family members come in and they'll feel, I got to do something. I got to save this person. I have to take away their suffering and pain. And that the mistake will be to act too quick. We'll act without assessing and really hearing what the other person is looking for. And so my first step for a family member who is trying to effectively support someone who is maybe having an emotional burst is to actually not forget about the other person for a second and focus on regulating your own emotions. Step back, right? Pause. What do you notice in your own body? What are your urges? What are the thoughts that you're having? Are you having urges to save the person? Are you having urges to, I got to fix them right now? All of that is going to create an urgency that is simply going to increase the intensity of the moment. And so my first step is to regulate your own emotions. The second step, I would say, is after you've really regulated and done some of your own curiosity around your own emotions, knowing how you're feeling, is to validate the other person. And validation can be as simple as just listening to what they're saying. It's a whole continuum. So, validating the other person's emotion. What is this person maybe thinking? And is there a kernel of truth that makes sense in what they're doing, right? Or in what they're saying, or in how they're feeling. And so regulating your own emotions, validating the other person, that can be as simple as just listening, really actively listening and being there with them. And then to assess, to ask, to make sure that you've got it right. Being specific and direct, but gentle. How can I help you here? How can I support you? Do you want me to just listen? Do you want me to help you figure out what's going on here? That in and of itself is actually validation, right? Because you're not jumping in and being like, come on, we've got to get you into this program or do this. You're really asking and really listening to what does this person want? And I think that those three steps are really effective ways to have a conversation with someone who might be feeling quite dysregulated and engaging in a behavior that feels scary or is scary. The first step is you've got to regulate your own emotions before you can have that conversation effectively with anybody, but especially with someone who has BPD.
What if the person with BPD doesn't know what they want and they're in a meltdown? I don't know. Stop asking me. Don't validate. I know that it happens often. I don't know if with people that I work with, they don't want the validation. They don't want to be pitied or, oh, I see you. Oh, what can I do to help? They just want a quick fix, like fix this misery. And they go into this outburst of, I don't know, don't ask me. So what do we do then?
And if someone is telling you, I want you to stop validating, I want you to stop saying you understand, stop doing that. Validate them. That's functional validation, right? Is to if someone's saying, I don't want you to do that, stop doing that. And again, I think it's really about this idea of about the everyone kind of taking care of their own emotional responses. And so in a situation like that, if somebody's screaming at you and saying, I want you to take away this pain, I can't. You can't. No one can take away somebody else's pain. It's just not possible, right? We are all responsible for our own emotions and what we do with them. And so if someone is saying that they're in pain, you can soothe them, you can encourage them to use skills. But at the end of the day, what's most important is that you are not escalating the situation. And so if someone's saying, go away, I don't want you right now. Okay, I'm going to go away and I'm going to use my own distress tolerance skills so I can come back and really be present in helping you. But also to know your limitations. There is no way that somebody can take somebody else's pain away. It's just not possible. And so knowing your own limitations and some acceptance there that this person is suffering, that you want to support them, and that you have limitations, and trusting that they have it within themselves to use their skills regulate.
I think that's the hardest part, to see a loved one in so much pain and you can't be that quick fix for them. And seeing a loved one in pain is such a hard thing that we want to fix it, but really what you said before, knowing that we can't. So that awareness.
Yeah. And that, I think a lot of the work in how to support your loved ones with BPD is using these skills on yourself. Is everyone starting to use these skills, right? Radically accepting your limitations. I can't take away somebody's suffering. I can't. I can help. I can encourage them to do something. I can point them in a direction. But at the end of the day, DBT has the assumption we may not have created our suffering, but it's our job to fix the problem. And
our responsibility.
It's our responsibility. It's our job. And that can be bring up a lot of grief for loved ones to radically accept that I cannot just suck out the pain of this other person.
Yeah. So you mentioned using the skills. So someone with BPD, they're going to DBT and they're using the skills. You saying that if a family member wants to get involved, learn the skills?
Yeah. I think that learning the skills, and it's why when a teenager comes in or someone under 18, we typically have them go into a multifamily skills group. So the individual is not just learning these tools and skills, the entire family is getting a common language and really using these skills on themselves, identifying what are my targets? What are my behavioral targets that I need to? Am I a person who comes in and wants so desperately to take away this person's pain that I'm trying to solve everything for them and problem solve for them and fragilize them?
Mm.
That might be, I think a lot of times that's parents' behavioral target is I'm going to do less problem solving and more just listening and validation. It's really hard to do that. But that is everyone in the family identifying their own personal behavioral targets and stop looking at this one person as the identified patient.
Yeah.
Because these skills are for everybody and we
Yeah.
all have limitations and we all have areas of dysregulation. And so really looking at your behavior and what you'd like to work on and what you can do a little bit differently as opposed to looking at this person as an identified patient or an identified problem.
That's a
Which
good
is
point. Very good point. So, a loved one is going through intense emotions. They happen frequently with BPD. Can a loved one manage these intense emotions in order to prevent them from doing an impulse activity that might have a bad outcome? Can we stop something when we see a train wreck happening and we're like, wait 1 second? Can we get involved?
yes, I say yes. And at the end of the day, we are all responsible for our own emotions and our own actions. And if somebody is going to act impulsively or do something, there's some radical acceptance that's going to happen. What I can say you can do, right, is again to pause, to really stop. If you see someone going into scary behavior that you don't really understand, is to pause, is to really pay attention again to your body, is to validate and cheerlead yourself. I want to help, I want to take away this pain, and to pause and validate yourself. Encourage somebody to use skills. If someone is in a crisis, you can do whatever you need to do to try and help them get to the appropriate resources, which might look like, can we call your therapist right now? Do you need to go to the hospital right now? Do you want me to hide or put away sharps, things that are harmful? I'm not saying that there isn't support, right? Like active things you can do. But I do think there is an element of letting go of trying to fix or solve this person's behaviors, if that makes sense.
Wow, that's difficult because if you know that a loved one does self-harm
Mhm.
or let's say binge eats and then suffers afterwards, or there could be so many things, you know better than I, that and then they regret it afterwards and there's shame and a lot of work to process what happened. So we're basically saying it's okay, maybe even a suicide attempt.
Yeah.
Let's say it's a parent or a spouse. What do we do?
Yeah. I think that one important thing, Matana, is for loved ones to know your own limitations, right? Know your own limits. We all have limits. We all have things that we are not able to do. And I think that knowing your own limit is very important with working with someone who's engaged in high risk behavior. If it is not within your limits to answer the phone when someone is feeling suicidal. That's really important to know. And it's really important to communicate that to the other person clearly.
Mhm.
I think Brene Brown says something like, clear is kind. And I think that's very true. And if I am not going to be able to help this person when they call me and they say that they're suicidal, you need to communicate that to them and you can help them brainstorm. Well, what can you do in that moment? You can
Right.
also validate that it's incredibly painful to be told a limit. That is painful
Mm.
to hear I can't do that or I can't answer this or you can't call me when you're drunk. I'm not okay with that. That's painful and so you can validate that. but knowing your limits. And of course, you can help somebody get to the appropriate services and provide them with resources. But we are all, you can't save somebody. You can't save somebody, and you can't do the healing for this other person.
It's just so hard. And it's so confusing because when the crisis is at the moment or this intense emotion, all you want to do is stop it. Like,
Mhm.
let's do everything to stop it. So it's hard to just say, okay, the right way to go about it is to make sure that I can, whatever I'm doing is in my ability and to trust them in their process.
It's a little bit so much too. I'm curious, Matana, what emotion is coming up for you and thinking about this sort of acceptance of letting go? What emotion you're noticing in yourself?
Sadness, such
Sadness.
sadness. I just had someone come to me with her child and she was going through panic attacks, not borderline, but like just couldn't breathe, panic attacks. And she was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
she's going to learn how to breathe and she's going to need to learn how to get through it.
Yep.
And that despair of what she's just going to like, what if she fails school and what if she doesn't have friends?
Sadness, fear.
Yeah.
Sadness, fear, I think, are the emotions that come up a lot. And fear, I think, is such a powerful emotion that gets us to do so many different things, right?
Yeah.
The fear, what if?
Exactly.
And there is an element, and this is why I say the skills directing them at the caregiver is so important, right? Of radical acceptance that
Yeah.
I'm not God. I can't save this person. And also to allow yourself and the other person the opportunity to do something different. I think that fear oftentimes leads to people jumping in and problem solving. Let me take away your pain. You can't handle this. You're not going to be okay. And so there's a lot of intervening because of the caregiver's fear, which leads to this sort of dynamic of the other person being like, okay, this person is going to, this sort of transaction of, I can't do it without this person. I can't moderate or regulate my own emotions. I need this person. And it doesn't allow for any new learning. It doesn't allow for anyone to see, okay, I had a panic attack and that was really painful, but I also learned that putting ice on my face was super helpful. Doing a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, looking at my senses and grounding was super helpful. That was painful and I got through it and it didn't last forever. And so there is an element of tolerating that fear and not acting on it as a caregiver so that there can be some new learning that happens.
And giving them hope. I think it's giving the person that's struggling hope that they can get through it. I remember when my daughter was going through severe anxiety, I was reading this book of how to not enable your child, that they don't feel like they could do it alone. And it's such a hard balance to do, that they feel like you care. And it's not like I don't care about you. You're going to suffer on your own, but be with them while they're tapping into what they could do in order to feel better, get out of a panic attack. Yes, support, but let them take the steering wheel. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.com. That's BetterHelp.com, the leading online platform for therapy. Many people come to me for help, and one of my questions are you willing to go to therapy? Very often, it is very expensive. BetterHelp is affordable. You don't have to leave your house. You can get it from the comfort of your sofa, your bed, your office. It's one click away. There are thousands of licensed clinicians on this platform. Sometimes it's so overwhelming to go to therapy. Nowadays, most therapists are on Zoom. If you want to get 10% off your first month, use the link in the show notes, betterhelp.com/hope to recharge. Use the link below and start your therapy from the comfort of your home. Millions of people from all over the world are using them. If you don't know where to start, go to betterhelp.com/hope to recharge. That's betterhelp.com/hope to recharge. Start your wellness now.
And everyone is different. And so some of the validating statements that I say, some of the encouraging statements I say will not resonate with everybody. But I do think that in those moments of crisis, a 1-2 punch of validating the person's experience. This is so hard. I can see how much you're suffering. That is validation to say, I see that you're just suffering and having such a hard time. acknowledging this is a difficult moment, and then the encouragement. And the encouragement can be coupled with cheerleading. I know this is a difficult moment, and I know you've got what it takes to get through this. I believe in
Mm.
you. And so you're validating how painful it is, and then you're
And
encouraging.
giving them encouragement. Yeah,
And
he said
then
that in the book, right? And then step back and just sit there and
And then you got to use your own skills to tolerate your distress so that you don't come in and save the person and
Mhm.
communicate to them that someone needs to save you, that you don't have it within yourself to tolerate this, right? Because I think
Yeah.
that happens a lot is people swooping in and saving the other person, which then can actually lead to more invalidation. I don't have what it takes. I need mom or I need my boyfriend
Yeah.
to
Oh,
do this.
yes, yes. So you touched upon validation now, and it's how important is validation in interactions. And I think you touched upon it of some examples. Is there any other examples that you can give that validations that are sometimes my kids will say, "Oh my God, you sound like such a therapist." Don't be a therapist. Don't therapize me. Is there any other validation sentences, examples that you can give us?
So, validation is, I would say, it is one of the most important pieces of helping and supporting someone who has BPD. That and validation is not cheerleading. Validation is not encouragement.
Mm,
Validation is not saying, you've got this, you go. That's
mm,
cheerleading, that's encouragement. Validation is simply communicating what you're going through makes sense. And there's actually in DBT different levels of validation that we teach,
mm-hmm,
right? The first level of validation is to just be there, right? Is to be listening and present and awake, right? It's why when somebody gets on their phone and is talking to you, it hurts so much because
mm.
that's invalidating. I'm not giving you time and attention. And so the first step is to just pay attention. Um, the second step is to really accurately reflect, which is that sort of checking in with the person to make sure that you have it right, that you're not assuming that you know what's going on with the other person. Help me. Do you
Am
need my
I
help?
understanding you? Is this what you mean?
Do I have it right? Is this what I'm hearing? Repeating it back. Is this
Mm-hmm.
what's going on? You said you want me to help. Do you want me to problem solve? Do you want me to validate? Making sure that you are getting it right as
Right.
opposed to just charging ahead. You can validate somebody's history if you know them, right? This is a little bit like mind reading.
Mm,
Know that somebody has a history of struggling with emotional dysregulation and say, I know that I know how hard you've been working on it, and it can feel really frustrating that this is happening again. So you can
mm.
validate within the context that you know that their behavior, feelings, actions make sense
Can you
given their.
also bring previous history? Like, you remember when it happened, when we were blah, 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 and you did, and you got through it. Can you give them that part of hope?
Absolutely. Sure. Yep. That would be like encouragement, right? That would
Right,
be a little
right.
encouragement and validation because you're
Mhm.
validating that you are remembering their experience. You remember how difficult it was in the past, and you saw firsthand that they got through this difficult moment. That's absolutely something that you can do with invalidation. Normalizing what's happening too. Anybody would feel this way. Who wouldn't be upset? Who wouldn't be frustrated about this? That's a level of validation. And being really radically, genuinely yourself. I think that's a lot of times where people go wrong with validation is they feel like
Yes.
they're a
Yeah.
robot.
Yes.
Like you are making sense. And
Right.
that's
Bring the
not,
compassion and bring the compassion.
yeah. And again, you can't really meaningfully validate if you haven't regulated your own emotions and validated yourself first. And I think that's
That's
really
so important.
for caregivers is if you're having a hard time understanding validation, start with yourself. How can you self-validate? How can you pay attention to yourself? How can you reflect back to yourself? How can you help yourself? How does your behavior make sense given what's going on? And so I think that validation, it starts with yourself. The other piece about validation, I think, is that we've been talking a lot about how you validate verbally, but I'd say just as important, if not more important, is what's called functional validation, which is doing the behavior, functionally validating somebody. There's this great example in one of the DBT texts that if you were in a burning building and a firefighter came up and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in this burning building, and the firefighter looked up and said, oh my goodness, that looks so scary. That looks so uncomfortable and hot. That would be verbally validation. That was scary. But how would it feel if the firefighter was just like down and looking up there? Be incredibly invalidating because they have a ladder they can give you and
Wow.
they can save you.
Wow. Such a good example.
And that
Right.
if somebody's telling you, get away, I don't want to talk to you, it is not validating to say, I see how you're upset. Can you sit down and give me a dear man? That's validation would be, okay,
I
let's
see you need your space.
And then
I see you need your space. I'm going to leave now. If you want to talk later, let me know. I'm here.
Functional validation can be like somebody is applying for a job and you know that they've been having a hard time and you pick up an application for them, or you say, do you want to sit down and do an application together? There's so many different ways to validate. And I think functional validation is a really big one, is validating through actions as opposed to saying anything.
Yeah. I want to touch upon that for a second with kids in general. I feel sometimes kids in general will test you to see if you care, and they'll say, okay, you don't care anyway, and I don't want to talk to you, and they'll run out of the room or whatever, and they want you to come back to them and say, oh, I see you're upset. What's going on? And by you really going, if they say, I don't want to talk to you, and you come to them, I feel you're teaching them don't communicate exactly what you need. So if you don't go to them and you say, okay, you must need space now, hopefully in the future they'll learn that technique didn't work, the communication skill, and they're going to say, hey, I'm feeling blah, blah, blah. Can we talk about it? Or I'm really feeling discouraged because of this. I want to discuss it. I'm a little bit annoyed, frustrated, angry, lonely, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
But the validating, okay, you want your space? Okay, you got it. Tell me if you want to talk about it, I'm here. Let me know when.
That's it. That's it. And I think that really, when we talk about what we hope to get in family sessions in DBT, is really this beautiful kind of chain of helping somebody accurately express how they're feeling. What do you actually need, coupled with validation? And that can completely change the dynamic.
Yeah.
But if someone's saying, I don't want you to leave me alone, and you're coming in and swooping in, that is validation. And so validating that, and also showing them, if you want me to come and give you a hug, don't tell me to go away.
Just tell me. Yeah. An important part of supporting a loved one through any crisis is self-care, like you said. First, regulate yourself. So there's the family self-care as the parent, as maybe not parent, maybe as a spouse, maybe it's a sister, brother. I just met with somebody that told me that it's their sibling, that they feel like that if they'll die if they don't take care of them, but the younger sibling is falling apart because they feel like they need to hold the sibling. If I don't do anything to save, she might kill herself. And I needed to explain to her, it's not your job to keep her alive. And it was she broke down. She's like, but what if something happens? So there's a balance between self-care, compassion, and boundaries. I think boundaries is one of the things that people need to learn first about. How do we set healthy boundaries without hurting the one that is going through the treatment, healing? How do we do all this? Boundaries, healthy boundaries, teaching healthy boundaries, effective boundaries, and self-care for the supporting family member, not for the client, the BPD.
How does a family member kind of set those boundaries? Is that what you're saying here? Yeah. I think the first step is something that we've already touched on, is the importance of slowing down and really observing your own limits. Really knowing what you are capable of and what you're not capable of, what you can do and what you can't do. Some people, it's fine. And we use this as therapists too. right? If we set a limit with a client, a lot of times another therapist, this might be within their limits, but this is not within my limits. It's not within my limits to get phone coaching calls 10 times between the hours of 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. or whatever. As a family member, you need to know your limits. What are things that you are not okay with? I am not okay with you coming in and screaming at me and saying, I'm going to kill myself. I am not going to respond well in that situation. You need to know your own limits. The next piece I would say is to not express those limits in the heat of the moment. And by that, you need to do a lot of this work about your own limits when you're not in a crisis, when they're not in a crisis. There's
Speak
a lot
about it before.
Yeah, and before you even speak about it, you need to think about it and really observe and describe to yourself, what are the things that I'm just not able to do, and know that. And so then when emotions aren't super high, when there isn't a crisis on the table, when your loved one isn't coming to you in the heat of the moment, having that conversation with them and expressing your feelings about it, really coming from a place of, these limits are about me. They're not about you. They're actually about me. I feel that when you call me after drinking and you've been driving, I feel terrified. I feel terrified. I feel guilt. I feel shame. And I feel like I'm not able to support you the way I would like to because I'm so caught up in my emotions then. But really coming from a place of, these are my limits. This isn't about you. This is about me. They're my limits. State the limit. Say, if you're drunk, I can't talk to you on the phone because it's so painful for me. That's not within my limits. And anticipate that there is going to be an increase in emotions when you...
Yeah, because it's a abandonment. The whole time you're talking, I'm thinking one of the traits is abandonment. And by somebody saying, I will not engage with you, XYZ, this is my limitation, it feels like conditional relationship, conditional love. And it could be escalating for somebody with BPD, right?
You can, and you can validate that. I know it's really hard to hear these limits. I know it's hard to have limits set. I know it's painful to feel like I'm not going to be able to be there for you there. You can validate that piece. But at the end of the day, to not set those limits is much more harmful than setting those limits.
For the long run, for the healing, for creating a healthy life for themselves and to continue to thrive.
Absolutely. Yeah. To continue to thrive for the health of the relationship, right? If you continue to say that you're available or able to do things that you're just not able to because you get so dysregulated, that is setting you up for resentment, frustration, and responding to a situation not very effectively, right? And so setting these limits is super, super hard, but it's for the health of the transaction between you and your loved one. If you don't do it, that's invalidation, right? If you don't say, I'm not going to pick up the phone, and someone's calling you and calling you and calling you, that will feel more invalidating than orienting them to the fact of, I can't do this because it's so painful for me.
Right.
And so in the long run, it's a really important step to be able to know your limits, express your limits, validate that it's painful, and then to hold your limits with something.
Yeah. And I think such an important piece that you said is do it when it's calm. Be mindful yourself and your loved one with BPD is in the right space to hold these new boundaries that we're setting. Yeah. And the word compassion keeps on coming up because we could say anything with compassion and it's just received in a different way because it's hard to hear it.
It is hard to hear it. And I think that all of these skills to build on themselves, and I know we've talked about the biosocial theory, but I think one thing that can be helpful in holding on to empathy for compassion for someone is to remember that there is a biological sensitivity for people who have emotional dysregulation BPD.
What are we doing to help ourselves improve and heal? What's important to us? How can we cultivate small changes in our brain, in our day-to-day life with our own tools? Sometimes this process is very lonely and hard. Sometimes you need a therapist, a psychiatrist, and somebody like me, somebody that went through the same thing. And I love working with people that are ready to do the work because it is expensive. It's a lifelong investment into yourself, into your future. When you start working with me, you're investing into your long-term stability, into your long-term mental health. What are you willing to do to make the changes? You could say, I don't know what I want. I don't even believe things can change, but I'm no longer willing to stay in this position where I am now. Choose yourself. If you want to work one-on-one, link is in the show notes. Schedule a free 30-minute consultation and be ready to see a different you.
They are feeling their emotions more intensely. Their emotions are hitting them harder. And I think that can help somebody develop compassion and hold on to compassion when it may be really hard to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it was one of the episodes that you said, just imagine somebody was in a fire and all their skin was ripped off. Every touch will be brutal. And when we have that visual and the emotion, it can help. Even if we can't relate, because so often we can't relate to somebody that has intense emotions if we don't care about them. Okay, fine. I once had a friend that used to say, Matana, I don't understand. If I cancel on you, you're like, okay, great. So let me know when you want to go again. You're always like, okay, yes, no, move on. And that's it. And she's like, doesn't it bother you? I'm like, no. Years and years later, did I realize she's probably either a highly sensitive person or maybe she has borderline. And for her, change of plan or somebody that will reschedule can be, oh my God, you're abandoning me. Am I not important to you?
Yeah. Yeah. And knowing
And I couldn't relate to it. I'm like, what are you saying?
Yeah. And so that's such a great example of we don't feel things with the same intensity as everyone. And we may not actually really understand that, but we can certainly try to be like, this person has a wiring that is feeling their emotions differently. It's hitting them like a freight train, where for me, it might be like, what? Okay,
Yeah.
now I have more time to do whatever
Exactly.
I got.
It's not personal. It's not personal.
It's not personal.
So going back to the families getting their own support and creating their well-being, do you have any recommendations of support groups for family members or ways to keep the family member, like keep their mental health okay? Do you have any tips on that?
My first tip is to get your own therapy. Do your own therapy. Do the work on yourself. Get your own support. Carve out time where you are talking about how this is making you feel. Carve out a time where you have a therapist who can help you.
Does it have to be a DBT or just any therapist?
And it does not have to be a DBT. I think it's nice to know the common language, but at the end of the day, do therapy for yourself because you need support, and get some support people around you. I think that, and it doesn't have to be DBT. Just do that for yourself. Self-soothe yourself, right? Learn how to self-soothe yourself and use distress tolerance skills so that you can tolerate those waves of emotion that your loved one has. And then there are some groups that you can definitely look into. There's a program called Family Connections, and the National Institute of Mental Health, they have some different programs, and Family Connections is all about BPD, emotion dysregulation, and teaching really the families how to support each other. So I definitely encourage people to go and check out the National Institute of Mental Health, Family Connections, so that they can really get a deep dive into how to use some of these tools. There's also Treatment and Research Advancements, TARA for BPD. It's a nonprofit organization, and it's devoted to research and education for those affected by BPD and their family members. So that's a really great place to look for support. And then in the New York City area, Emotions Matter is a great nonprofit that is really created and run by folks who have BPD and their family members. And so those are just a couple of resources. And I think if some of these things don't feel, just get your own therapy, do your
Yeah.
own care. And if therapy isn't something that you're like, I don't know if I feel like I want to go to, do something for self care for yourself, right? If you're a runner, go run. If
I
you
was just
want
going to say run, meditate,
to,
yoga,
there's so many different,
massage.
but
Right.
you've got to prioritize your self care and be a little bit, see it as a target.
Prioritize it.
Yeah,
Prioritize it because you'll need it. It's something that you can't afford to not have because supporting somebody with BPD that's so close to you will really affect you. It
yeah,
affects your emotions, your energy,
yeah.
and you want to do it and you don't want to run out of energy. You want to be there for them.
Absolutely. And I think that if you look at the model, comprehensive model at DBT, that's what we're doing in DBT. That's why there's a consultation team for the therapist,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just supervision or consultation.
Exactly. Right.
Therapy, therapist. And as a
Mm,
loved one, you need therapy for you. And if it's
right.
not there, time for yourself so that you can feel regulated and grounded and not in a
Eh,
crisis all the time.
right. Yeah. And if it's karaoke, go do karaoke. If it's go to a show, a movie,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
but take time for yourself where you're not actively churning and thinking about how do I save this other person.
Yeah.
Take care of
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Take time to sit with your own emotions.
I think this is so important for parents to hear. I think it's so important for spouses to hear, partners to hear, even siblings. So important. Sometimes
Yeah.
with friends, it's not as because friends are not intensely in the same place with them 24/7. So it's not their responsibility in a way. Like a family member can feel responsible, can
Mhm.
take more. But I'm saying when it's a family member, it's that much more important to prioritize self care.
Yeah.
And not because you're selfish, it's because you care about the other one and you want to make sure that that you don't give up.
Yeah. It's not a suggestion of, oh, maybe you should do some self-care while
Hmm.
your loved one is
Yeah.
in. It is a requirement to effectively help your loved one is to do your own self-care, whatever that looks like, so that you can feel in wise minds when
Mm.
you are having these conversations. Nothing is going to be helped by you becoming so exhausted, burnt out, frustrated that you got nothing left to give.
What skills do family members need to learn to better support their loved ones? Or is it just learning in general? Do you think that there are specific skills that are most important that they should learn from day one?
Yeah, I think validation. I think that validation is a really important skill to learn. And I
Hmm.
think learning the nuances of it, learning that validation isn't cheerleading, that validation sometimes can be really hard to do and painful to do. So learning all about validation and how to do that with your loved one is, I think, crucial and super important. The other thing I think that's really important to learn is your own distress tolerance skills, which again is coming back to you, focusing on you, learning how to manage your own distress so that you don't get into a situation where you're just escalating. And so knowing, okay, when I start knowing when am I at a breakdown point? When do I need to take a step back? And what do I need to do to take care of myself? And so knowing those specific skills for yourself and interpersonal effectiveness. We went over the Dear Man scale. I think that's a really
Hmm.
great one because just as the goal is to help somebody who has BPD effectively communicate to you. Family members and loved ones need to effectively communicate with their loved one. And
Hmm.
that look like setting limits, but you need to be able to describe what's going on, express your feelings, and then clearly say, this is my limit.
Hmm.
And so I think that's a really important one to know in supporting your loved one.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are great. Those are great. Okay. Role of therapy, family therapy. Do you recommend that when your loved one is starting DBT, let's say they're doing comprehensive DBT,
Mhm.
do you recommend that the family go to family therapy in addition? And if so, what should they expect when they go to the family therapy? Or maybe it's too much to process family therapy during the first year of comprehensive. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when someone goes into comprehensive DBT, it's a lot. It's a lot that you're asking them to do. You're asking them to go to individual skills group, you're asking them to go to skills training. And so a lot of times I think that having someone focus mindfully on DBT,
On
on healing,
themselves, healing.
which doesn't mean that the rest of the family can just be like doing whatever. Like the rest of the family, go do your own therapy, right? Go do your own DBT.
Maybe
And
as a family, they can go without the one that's going through DBT.
yeah, I think that a big thing is to not continue to be like, this is the identified sick patient, right?
Mhm.
Everyone can do their own work because when you look at a family unit too, right? Yes, there may be one person who is struggling with behavioral dysregulation, but a lot of times it's the it's the transaction, remember, that counts. And so I think that in that beginning part of DBT, if somebody's in comprehensive DBT, have them do that, have the individual or the family members do their therapy. Multifamily group, if it's a teen, they usually ask for parents to join with their kiddo, but really doing that sort of skill work on yourself first, I think is really the most important piece to
So you're not a
creating.
big you're not a big believer that family therapy is needed at
I
this
think that,
in the beginning at least.
yeah, I think at the beginning, my thinking is that oftentimes focusing on identifying your own behavioral targets, your own areas of dysregulation, and really working on yourself and then coming together that way.
Yeah, it makes sense that we minimize the effect of if I do this, it will have a ripple effect on so many other things. So the individual work, it goes so far. I don't know. I'm wondering if maybe like when we said on good days, set boundaries and explain the boundaries. And so maybe that's a good place to go through like in a safe place with a therapist that you can
Mhm.
discuss these things, these heavy topics. Because often people are saying, okay, if it's a good day, I don't want to bring anything up. I don't want to risk bringing up anything that might hurt or escalate emotions. So we're just maybe incorporate every few weeks, do a check in a safe setting for everyone. What do you think about that?
I think that is a great plan. I think that's a great plan to have kind of the support of a therapist there. I really think at the beginning, doing your own work to learn about your own triggers, your own limits, and your own ways of regulating is the foundation. There's if you don't have the ability to step back and say, oh, I'm getting dysregulated right now, and you're just forging ahead with having some of these conversations, how effective is that going to be?
Right.
And so I think doing the work on yourself and then coming together and having a therapist just be a support. Can you express what you're
Yeah.
feeling? Let's say this person did this, they did that. How are you feeling about
Right.
this? What emotions are coming up for you in this moment?
Right. It's sometimes helpful just to have somebody navigate the conversations that can be very emotional and heavy. So a safe place for that. Managing expectations. How can we
Yeah.
manage our expectations realistically regarding the progress of our loved ones' treatment in their journey? I think this is such a complex question.
This is a really complex question. Growth, progress, change it's very infrequently this linear sort of trajectory, right? There's ups, downs. And what we know about behavior is if you've done a behavior, it will always be in your repertoire. It can always
Right.
come back. And so my first um, thought on managing expectations is behavioral change is slow, really slow. It's really slow. And it's like a drop of water on a rock, just consistency and dedication and coming back to it. But part of all of these skills is patience and practice. And it's slow. But that's the journey. That is the journey. That is the work. That is the healing right there.
So go in
It,
knowing that it takes time. So
it
just
takes time.
knowing in advance it takes time. Don't expect major changes just because your loved one is going to group and DBT and applying the skills doesn't mean that you're going to see a radical change in their day-to-day lives. It could take a year or two to see a change.
Yes. And just because you're not seeing a radical change doesn't mean
Mm-hmm.
that change isn't happening. And so know that behavioral change is very slow.
Mm-hmm.
And that just because you can't see it doesn't mean that things aren't changing. And so to remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's so crucial to know that because sometimes I hear so many times they're going to therapy and I don't see any change. I think that they're doing the same thing. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, wait, let the process happen. And
Yeah.
I know it's hard and I know it's really hard to wait.
Yeah.
But yeah, but managing the right expectations is important.
I think it's really important. And I think that how I can say this and know this is I've seen it in my clients, but I think the most powerful example I've had is my own personal experience, right? There were years that technically I would have set the diagnosis of BPD. And it took years, literally years, for those behaviors to change. And there were many times people would be this person is going down this path, and it didn't mean that things weren't changing, but I also had to do that work myself, and nobody could do it for me. And so I know that behavioral change happens. It's glacially slow sometimes, and everybody's got to do it for themselves. And so to believe in the process, to not give up, and to continue to use those, to continue to come back, consistency and practice over and over again. And to take care of yourself and encourage yourself because it is exhausting, especially as
Mm-hmm.
loved ones, to see that and to feel scared and see that, but to give somebody the opportunity to change, to live their life. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to wrap up with this question. I think it's super important. And I don't know if there's anything that can be done, but I'm curious, should a loved one get involved and say, this therapist is helping you or not? Maybe you should change a therapist. At what point should we just say, okay, you're in the driver's seat. You choose your therapist and your treatment, and we're just here to support. As a loved one, should we give our opinion of our thoughts?
Yeah, I think that it varied case by case. I think with children, young people, somebody who hasn't been to therapy, somebody who is really dysregulated and maybe not able to access their own wise mind, that absolutely the family should be sharing their thoughts and feelings and helping to guide treatment. That being said, somebody who's been in treatment for a really long time and has done the work and is struggling, but is experimenting with their agency and what they want to do, I think that we have to respect that too. You're absolutely able to express your feelings, but know that just because you express them doesn't mean that somebody is going to take that recommendation and run with it. And also thinking about like why am I feeling the need to say this to this person? What is it about my thoughts about this therapist or this therapy that makes me feel that it's not working? Is it because I'm not seeing change like that and I'm feeling frustrated? Or is it because I think that there's actually something that is detrimental to this person? So really examining with curiosity your why behind somebody.
I feel DBT is such a mindful practice of emotions, feeling it's and family members. And I'm going to sum it up with this. From all these questions, I hear that in almost every answer there was mindfulness, awareness of, okay, where am I? Where are them? What's feelings? What's going on? What's the fear? And I want to tell anybody that is supporting any loved one, if it's borderline or something else, start practicing mindfulness. because
Yes.
you need to be aware of so many things. And so often we're not mindful about what's really going on.
Yeah. Slow down. Take time to get curious. And mindfulness is the foundation of all of the DBT skills. And it's the foundation of what we need as therapists, what we need as clients to heal, and as family members to be effective and use skillful means in any situation with anybody. So that's spot on.
Meg, thank you for taking us down this journey and for devoting so much of your love, care, wisdom, and hope.
Thank you, Matana. Thank you for doing what you do and bringing such a positive, hopeful message and shining lights on all sorts of different ways of healing and hope in our world. And it's really important work, what you do, and it's the message
Thank
that you
you.
send. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And let's hope that we're going to really break the stigma on borderline and give a lot of hope for those that are pursuing a life worth living and telling them that they can. And hopefully really giving them that spark, you can get into remission. You could do this.
You can do it. You can do it. Just one moment at a time.
Thank you. Bye till next time.
Thank you. Bye.
Looking to reduce your anxiety and stress, relax your muscles, or get a better night's sleep? Check out Maxifies.com, 100% legal hemp, where you can find doctor-formulated, lab-certified, high-quality CBD oils, tinctures, and other items, cultivated, grown, harvested, and packaged in the United States, and available in different sizes and strength formulas. Check out Maxifies.com, that's MAXIFYZ.com, and use coupon code HOPE to get 10% off your order plus free shipping. That's Maxifies.com.